you must have asked yourself, what is it about Scripture that causes people to have such strong reactions to it, and to do such astonishing things and such unspeakable things in service to what is simply a book? Okay, so welcome back. This third video, and I hesitate to use the language, but I really can't find anything else that's adequate. I want to introduce my idea of what I call new Scripture. And you say to me, well, Pete, didn't you just say in those videos that there is no other Scripture apart from love one another, that there is no other gospel? That is actually quite true. But if you can think it through this way with me. So firstly, I'm positing this very, very simple spiritual injunction and saying that's it. Secondly, I have to define the terms in that injunction so that people can understand it. And then the third part of understanding any new concept or a challenging concept or even a revolutionary concept, people then say, well, have you got any examples that you can show me? And in the previous video, I gave the example of making someone a cup of tea. I think that is a really lovely, simple example of loving action that fulfills the criteria for that injunction, love one another. But of course, it isn't the only type of example. It's not the only type of action that fulfills the criteria. And so this is what new Scripture can do. It's really the only role that is permissible to something that might be called Scripture, is to give examples for people, or exemplars, of what love looks like in the world. So love one another. Shut the hell up. Here's what love looks like. It's any action of the body, including speech, directed to the welfare of another person and not your own welfare. And if you'd like some examples, here they are. So, in a sense, these principles that I'm going through have got it a little bit ass backwards. I wrote these works that I now call New Scripture, and I should be very clear. The categories of New Scripture are not closed. I haven't covered the field. And in fact, it may well turn out that my early attempts are nothing to write home about, and that there may be people who come onto the scene who can write exemplars of love in a much more beautiful and effective and moving way than I've been able to. It's just a bit of an attempt, an assay, if you will. Anyway, so I wrote these books really not actually knowing what the hell I was doing. And it's only in retrospect that they appear to me to be exemplars of love, and that really, in one very real sense, they just are love. They exude it. It is what they are steeped in, and they contain, well, I was going to say they don't contain anything else, but they contain love, and what I describe at a certain point as the opposite of love. Okay, what else can I say about them? They come in 3 different flavors at the moment. Actually, maybe 4, but one of the flavors is not, I don't really feel that I can lay any proper claim to it. It was just a bit of an exercise. But they come in 3 flavors. I'm just going to run through them here with you. So the first flavor, and this was the first one to come on the scene, that's a little book called Lightbringer. I wonder where the best place to put that is. Hopefully you can see that. I'll hold it up there. So that's flavor number 1. Flavor number 2 is a book that I didn't think I would ever actually move on from. I thought this was going to be it. That is The Complete Chronicles of Lupa. The other name for it is From the Chronicles of Lupa. The original works were called that. And then the third flavour, and this one's quite a revolutionary flavour. It came out of the blue. I didn't expect that I would write it. But it's got some real heft to it. It's probably my current favourite, but yeah, who can tell? So this one is called, as you can see, The Majesty of Judas. And even that's quite a radical departure from what you would have heard about this particular character. But on the back of the book, it's called the Book of Lily. And you can see that we just see the back of her head, the writing's in the wrong direction. That's because she, at some point in the book, she's described as being the sealed prophet. But Lily, sometimes called Shoshana, sometimes called Lilith, sometimes called Ruth, she is probably the most important character that I've ever written. So yeah, there we are. You must have asked yourself, what is it about Scripture that causes people to have such strong reactions to it, and to do such astonishing things and such unspeakable things in service to what is simply a book? There's a fantastic film called The Book of Eli. I hope you guys have seen it. If you haven't, check it out. It's a really awesome film. The evil character, Gary Oldman plays him absolutely brilliantly, as always, is on the hunt for a copy of the Bible, because he knows the power of this book. It would give him power over people's finances, over people's actions, over people's feelings. It would give him the power of life and death over people, and he knows it very well. I won't give you any spoilers or anything like that, but you must yourselves have wondered, what is it about this book or these books that have such astonishing power? So I spent a very long time thinking about that, trying to work out what it actually was that made these books so powerful. And the answer that I could come up with, being a writer myself and trying to uncode or decode or unlock the secrets of it, there are two major things. One is there's a particular type of language that is used by people who are writing Scripture. It is a kind of an elevated language. It's definitely a poetic language. It's a rhythmic language. It's repetitive. It uses strange syncopated rhythms and syncopated syntax. It's just a very strange and particular type of language that does tend to be quite similar across different types of Scripture. It's kind of an elevated, I sometimes say it's the language of extreme and elevated states. The other thing that these works have, they always tie this language into descriptions of things that are very, very intense. So even with all the ravenous splendor of language, as Larry Durrell said about the Psalms, the Gospels, the Old Testament, wouldn't really work if they just told the story of a reasonably successful insurance salesperson. So you've got to have this particular type of rhythmic prose, poetry, connected up with the deepest themes. And the best way I could describe them is love, death, love as stronger than death. Those are the themes of Scripture. And the beauty of that is that will sort of lay open the mechanism of Scripture without any need for recourse to anything particularly mystical or anything particularly inspired. It's just a particular type of rhythmic language that people lapse into when they sort of ascend into these elevated states, connected with stories or depictions of human suffering, human love, human death, and the overcoming of death. I call the prose, the particular type of language, I call it hypnagogic prose. There's no real magic in that word. It's the best one I could come up with. But it does indicate that the language has the potential and has the tendency to lull the rational mind so that it can directly instruct the heart. It's hypnagogic or slightly hypnotic in that sense. It's it's not like a stage magician. It's nothing as powerful as that. It's just a very mild, a very soft. But if you let it wash over you and you read the passages that speak to you again and again and again, you'll find that your rational mind is bypassed and your deep heart is directly instructed. So that's the language that I've tried to develop. It's based, at least in my example of it, it's based on the Hebrew poetry of the Old Testament, Song of Songs, Psalms in particular, and some of those prophetic books as well. But you could really take your example from anywhere in Scripture that speaks to you. I just think that Psalms they're astonishing. They're astonishingly beautiful, and Song of Songs really is the jewel in the crown of Western Scripture. That's just my point of views. And I just tried to turn that language, or tried to develop that language from the way that it is in the Old Testament in particular. I tried to modernize it. I tried to democratize it. I tried to really develop it to the point where it was so sharp and so keen that it could be like some kind of a magic sword that cuts through any heart, like a magic charm that raises both speaker and listener into new heights of communion and ecstasy. That's the way I put it in one of the books. So I've tried to modernize and perfect the particular type of prose or speech that the books engage in. And in terms of the emotional themes, there's a lot of beautiful stuff. There's a lot of kind of tender stuff and quite a lot of simple things as well. But there's quite a lot of it where I've really just turned the emotion up to 11. I had no other choice. I had to choose. Well, the stories were really given to me. I didn't really choose to what stories to tell. But they were so intense, I just had to turn them right up to 11. That's all I could have done. It was either, do it or get off the... So that's new scripture.